All right, so it looks like we've got a whole stack of articles here all about bong glass thickness.
Yeah, it seems like our listeners on a quest for the perfect bong.
They definitely want to get to the bottom of how glass thickness affects, well, everything.
It's a great question.
I've got to admit, I never realized there was so much to learn about this.
It's one of those things that most people don't think too much about.
You just kind of see a bong you like and go for it.
Right. But there's actually a lot of science and nuance involved.
So let's dive right in. One of the first things that jumped out at me from these articles is this whole thick versus thin debate.
Yeah, like, is thicker glass always better? Or is thinner the way to go?
There seem to be pros and cons to both. It's like this constant trade-off.
It is. Think of it like this. A thicker glass bong is kind of like the heavy-duty pickup truck of the bong world.
Okay, I like where this is going.
It's built to withstand a lot, but it might not be the most agile or fuel efficient.
So not the best for parallel parking.
Exactly. A thinner glass bong, on the other hand, is more like a nimble sports car. Sleek, smooth, but maybe not as tough.
Okay, I'm loving this analogy. So if I'm someone who's known to be a bit clumsy, I'm guessing thicker glass is the way to go?
For sure. If durability is your top priority, you want at least 7 mm thickness.
7 mm, okay.
There's a study, actually, by the Glass Manufacturing Institute in 2023.
Oh, wow, recent research.
Yeah, and they found that 7 mm glass can withstand impacts up to 50% higher than 4 mm glass.
Wow, 50%. That's a huge difference. So you're saying I'm way less likely to end up with a pile of broken glass if I accidentally knock it over?
Exactly.
But what about the actual hit? Does thickness affect how smooth the smoke is?
That's where the sports car analogy comes back in.
Uh,
Thinner glass tends to provide smoother, cooler hits because of the better airflow.
that makes sense.
The American Smoke Accessories Association did a study, I think it was in 2022,
Okay.
and they found that thinner glass bongs had something like a 20% improvement in airflow efficiency.
20%. That's got to be noticeable.
Yeah, it makes for a much more enjoyable experience.
So thicker glass is like the workhorse. It can take a beating. But thinner glass is the smooth operator for those who want a really comfortable hit.
Exactly. But there's more to consider than just those two things.
Oh, what else?
Heat resistance. Thicker glass wins in that category, too.
Interesting.
There's a group called the Thermal Properties of Glass Consortium. They found that above 6 mm thickness, you get 30% higher resistance to thermal shock.
Okay, now you've lost me a little. What is thermal shock?
It's basically what happens when you expose glass to really extreme temperatures really quickly.
Oh, okay. So like if I pour boiling water into a cold bong.
Exactly, or if you put a cold bong into hot water. That sudden change in temperature can make the glass crack or break.
Gotcha. So thicker glass is more resistant to that.
Much more.
So for those who are into high temp dabs, thicker glass would be the better choice.
Yeah, it's less likely to crack under those extreme temperatures. But, for the average user, it might not be as critical.
Okay, so it seems like there's no one-size-fits-all answer here. It really depends on what you're looking for in a bong.
Absolutely.
And to make things even more interesting, there are so many different thickness options available out there.
Oh yeah, it can get pretty overwhelming trying to figure out which one's right for you.
All right, so let's try to break it down a bit. What are some of the most common thickness ranges that people will come across?
Well, the most common range is what we call standard thickness, which is usually between 4 and 6 mm.
4 to 6 millimeters, okay.
Those are a good starting point for most people. They offer decent durability without being too heavy.
So good balance for everyday use.
Yeah, exactly. Then you move up to the premium thickness category.
Premium, fancy.
That's usually between 7 and 10 mm. These bongs are built like tanks.
Built like tanks, wow.
Yeah, they're often real showpieces with intricate designs and stuff.
So they're more than just functional pieces, they're like art.
Exactly. The International Glass Federation even mentioned them in their 2023 report. They were talking about how premium thick glass bongs are often seen as collectibles.
Oh, wow. So they can actually increase in value over time.
Some of them, yeah, depending on the artist and the design.
That's pretty cool. But I'm guessing all that extra thickness adds some serious weight.
It does. That's something to consider if you're someone who likes to move their bong around a lot.
Or if you just don't want to be doing bicep curls every time you take a hit.
Exactly.
All right, so what about the people who are all about portability? What are their options?
There are lightweight options out there, usually around 3 mm thick.
3 mm, okay.
Those are perfect for taking on adventures or for people who just prefer a lighter feel.
So if I'm the clumsy type and I prioritize durability above all else, you're saying 7 mm thicker is the way to go.
Absolutely. It's going to be the most likely to survive any accidental bumps or drops. Plus, you're covered for those high temp dabs if that's your thing.
Got it. But let's say I'm all about those super smooth hits, and I'm generally pretty careful with my belongings. Could I go thinner then?
In that case, you could definitely consider something in the 3 millimeter to 5 millimeter range. Just be aware that it will be more fragile.
So it sounds like we've got some pretty strong arguments on both sides of the thickness spectrum. Thicker for durability and heat resistance, thinner for airflow and a lighter feel.
Exactly.
And then there's the whole cleaning aspect, too. One of the articles mentioned a study by Smoke Clean.
Oh, yeah, that was interesting. They surveyed a bunch of bong users, and they found that thinner bongs were actually easier and faster to clean.
Really? I wouldn't have guessed that.
Yeah, it's counterintuitive, but it makes sense when you think about it.
Less surface area for the resin to cling to.
Exactly.
So every thickness has its pros and cons. Is there a way to figure out which one is best for a specific person?
I think it comes down to understanding your priorities and what you're looking for in a bong.
Like, how often do you use it? How important is portability?
Exactly. What's your budget? And, what kind of aesthetic are you drawn to?
So many things to consider. All right, well, before we get too overwhelmed, is there like a general sweet spot that works well for most people?
I think there is.
Like a good starting point for those who are new to bongs?
Yeah, or just want a solid all-arounder.
Okay, what is it?
Based on all the research and user feedback we've seen, the 5 to 7 millimeter range seems to be that sweet spot for a lot of people.
5 to 7. All right, what makes that range so special?
Well, for one, you're still getting a good level of durability. SmokeSafe, they're a bong safety organization, they released a report in 2023 showing a 35% lower breakage rate for bongs in this range compared to thinner options.
35%? Wow, that's a significant difference.
Yeah, and you're also still maintaining pretty good airflow efficiency, somewhere around 70 to 75%.
Still pretty smooth then.
Yeah, the American Smoke Accessories Association backs that up. And the feedback from people who use bongs in this range is really positive.
They seem happy with the performance and the durability.
Yeah, the overall experience, basically.
So it's like the best of both worlds. You get a good amount of protection without sacrificing too much on the smoothness of the hit.
Exactly. It's a great balance for both casual and regular users.
Okay, that's good to know. So if someone's feeling lost in a sea of thickness options, the 5 to 7 millimeter range seems like a solid place to start.
Absolutely. It's a great all-around option that ticks a lot of boxes.
Awesome. Now, we've talked a lot about the technical side of thickness, but what about aesthetics? How does the thickness of the glass play into how the bong actually looks?
That's a great question, because aesthetics are definitely a huge part of the bong experience.
It's gotta look cool, right?
Absolutely. And the thickness of the glass can really affect the visual appeal. Like, thicker glass, especially in that 7 to 10 millimeter range, gives artists a lot more room to work with.
More room to create those intricate designs and details.
Exactly. Think of it like having a bigger canvas.
Ah, I see what you mean. It's not just about the designs themselves either, right? The thickness also affects how the light interacts with the glass.
For sure. Thicker glass can refract the light in all sorts of interesting ways. It adds depth and dimension to the piece. It can even change how the colors look, making them more vibrant, almost like they're glowing.
That's so cool. So I guess while thinner glass might be favored for portability and those super smooth hits, thicker glass offers a whole other level of artistic expression.
It does, and it often has that more luxurious tactile feel to it, too.
Like you can really feel the quality and craftsmanship.
Exactly. So it's almost like choosing between a sleek, modern sports car and a classic, handcrafted Rolls-Royce.
You've got a knack for these analogies.
They both have their own unique appeal. It just comes down to personal preference.
I love that. And that's the beauty of the bong world, right? There's truly something for everyone.
Couldn't agree more.
But let's be real for a second. Some of those high-end, intricately designed bongs with the thicker glass, they can come with a pretty hefty price tag.
That's true. You're investing in not only the materials, but the skill and artistry of the glassblower.
So if someone's on a tighter budget, what are their options? Do they have to settle for something basic?
Not at all. They could consider a thinner glass option or a simpler design, but that doesn't mean sacrificing quality or aesthetics. There are tons of beautifully crafted bongs out there in the 4 millimeter to 6 millimeter range that are both affordable and visually appealing.
That's good to hear. So it's all about finding that balance between your budget and your desired aesthetic.
Exactly. And remember, even if you can't afford that dream bong right now, You can always upgrade later as your budget allows.
It's like building a collection. You start with a reliable daily driver and then slowly add those more unique and intricate pieces over time.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe you'll discover some new artists or styles along the way that you wouldn't have even considered before.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground when it comes to bong glass thickness, from its impact on durability, performance, and aesthetics to the fact that there's no one-size-fits-all answer.
It really is a personal journey.
But before we move on, I think it's important to talk about safety, because at the end of the day, we're dealing with glass here, and that can be fragile.
That's a great point. It's easy to get caught up in all the cool features and designs, but we should never forget about safety.
So no matter what thickness you choose, always handle your bong with care.
Absolutely. Avoid any roughhousing or horseplay, especially when it's filled with water.
And always make sure it's placed on a stable surface where it's unlikely to get knocked over.
So true. Because let's be honest, we've all had those close calls where we almost knocked our bong over. It's a heart-stopping moment.
Oh, tell me about it. Now, I'm curious, if the worst does happen and you do drop your bong and it breaks, what's the best way to clean up all that broken glass safely?
Okay, first and foremost, safety first. Always wear thick gloves and some kind of eye protection to avoid cuts.
Good point. You don't want to end up with tiny shards of glass embedded in your skin.
Exactly. And dispose of the broken glass properly. Wrap it up in newspaper or something so no one accidentally gets hurt.
Those are good reminders. Now, what about temperature changes? I've heard that thinner glass is more susceptible to cracking or breaking if it's exposed to extreme temperatures too quickly.
That's true. It's called thermal shock. It happens when there's a sudden, drastic change in temperature. Thinner glass is definitely more vulnerable to it.
So avoid things like pouring boiling water into a cold bong.
Exactly. Or putting a cold bong in hot water.
Makes sense.
And if you're using your bong for high-temperature dabs, just make sure it's made from heat-resistant glass. And always follow the manufacturer's instructions.
Safety should always be your top priority. A broken bong is not only a bummer, but it can also be dangerous.
Totally agree.
All right, so now that we've covered the safety basics, let's move on to another important aspect of bong ownership: maintenance.
Keeping your bong clean and well-maintained not only makes for a more enjoyable smoking experience, but it can also extend the lifespan of your piece.
We touched on cleaning briefly earlier when we talked about how thinner glass is apparently easier to clean.
Yeah, that was interesting. But I think it deserves a deeper dive, because no matter what thickness you choose, regular cleaning is essential.
So true. So let's break it down. For glass bongs, what are the most important maintenance tasks?
The number one thing is regular cleaning. Resin buildup can really affect the flavor of your smoke. Not to mention, it can clog the airflow and potentially even harbor bacteria.
Ugh, that's not a pleasant thought. So how often should you be cleaning your bong?
It really depends on how often you use it. If you're a daily smoker, you'll need to clean it more often than someone who only uses it occasionally.
Makes sense. But is there a general rule of thumb?
A good habit to get into is to at least give it a quick rinse with warm water after each session.
Okay, that seems manageable.
It'll help remove any loose resin and prevent it from hardening and becoming a real pain to clean later on.
So that's like the bare minimum. But what about a more thorough cleaning? How often should you be doing that?
I'd say aim for at least once a week, or even more often if you're a heavy user.
Okay, and what's the best way to do a deep clean?
The classic method is using isopropyl alcohol and salt. The alcohol helps dissolve the resin, and the salt acts as an abrasive to scrub away any stubborn buildup.
The old alcohol and salt trick? I've heard of that. It's pretty simple, right?
Yeah, you just fill your bong with the alcohol and salt mixture, give it a good shake, and then rinse it out thoroughly.
Easy enough. But what about those hard-to-reach areas? Like the percolator and the downstem, those can be tricky to get completely clean.
Oh, for sure. You might need some specialized cleaning tools for those.
Like what?
Long, flexible brushes, those are a must-have. They come in different sizes and shapes, so you can find ones that fit into those narrow tubes and crevices.
I've seen those at the smoke shop. They look kind of like pipe cleaners on steroids.
Exactly.
And what about those tiny little holes in percolators? Sometimes it feels like nothing can get in there.
For those, you can try using actual pipe cleaners. Yeah. Or even dental floss.
Dental floss.
Oh, really? Yeah, it works surprisingly well.
Huh. I'll have to try that. So once you've given your bong a good scrub, what's the best way to dry it?
Air drying is the best. Just make sure it's completely dry before you put it away to prevent any mold or mildew from growing.
Mold in a bong? That's a nightmare. speaking of putting it away, proper storage is important too, right?
Absolutely.
Hmm.
It's all about protecting your investment and keeping your bong in pristine condition.
Okay, so where's the best place to keep your bong when you're not using it?
Ideally, you want to find a cool, dry place away from direct sunlight. Sunlight can actually damage the glass over time, making it brittle,
Oh, I didn't know that.
and definitely keep it out of reach of any kids or pets. That's a given.
So basically, somewhere safe, stable, and out of direct sunlight.
Exactly. And you might even want to invest in a protective case, especially if you travel with your bong a lot.
A case, good idea. What kind of case would you recommend?
For thinner glass, you want something padded with separate compartments for each piece.
To keep everything from bumping into each other?
Yeah, you don't want any chips or cracks.
And for thicker bongs?
A hard shell case with a foam interior would be good. That'll protect it from impacts.
Okay, so we've covered cleaning and storage. Any other maintenance tips you want to share?
One thing that's often overlooked is the importance of regular inspections. Just take a few minutes every now and then to really look over your bong for any signs of wear and tear.
Like cracks or chips in the glass?
Exactly. Pay close attention to the joints and connections. Those areas are more prone to stress.
And if you find a crack, is it possible to repair it, or is it better to just get a new bong?
Honestly, it's usually best to just get a new one. Trying to repair cracked glass is tricky and often not worth the risk.
Better to be safe than sorry, right?
Exactly.
So to recap our maintenance tips, clean your bong regularly, store it properly, and inspect it for damage. Basically, treat it with the same care and respect that you would give any other valuable possession.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
All right, now let's switch gears and talk about something that's becoming increasingly important in every aspect of our lives: sustainability.
It's a hot topic these days, and it's something that the bong industry is starting to pay more attention to, which is great.
There seems to be a growing movement towards more eco-friendly and sustainable practices in, like, glass blowing and bong production in general.
There is, and it's being driven both by consumers and by manufacturers who are realizing the importance of reducing their environmental impact.
So, for someone who wants to make a more sustainable bong purchase, what are some things to look for?
One thing to consider is the source of the glass.
Like where it comes from?
Yeah. Some glass blowers use recycled glass in their creations.
Oh, wow. So you can actually buy bongs made from recycled glass.
You can, and it's a great way to reduce waste and conserve resources.
Hmm.
And some glass blowing studios are really going above and beyond. They're implementing all sorts of sustainable practices throughout the entire production process.
Like what kind of practices?
Well, they might use energy-efficient equipment, try to reduce their water usage, or even offset their carbon emissions.
That's amazing. And what about packaging? Is that something to consider as well?
Absolutely. Some brands are using sustainable packaging materials, like recycled cardboard or biodegradable plastics. It all adds up.
It's awesome that there are so many options out there for people who are passionate about sustainability.
It's definitely a step in the right direction.
And I think consumers have a lot of power here. By choosing to support brands that are making an effort to be more eco-friendly, we can encourage even more companies to adopt these practices.
Absolutely. Voting with your wallet, it's a powerful thing.
So if sustainability is important to you, do your research, ask questions, and support the brands that are aligning with your values.
That's great advice. It might take a little extra effort, but it's worth it in the long run.
Okay, so now let's switch gears and talk about something that I think is really fun: customization. Because, I mean, there's nothing quite like having a bong that's uniquely yours, right?
Absolutely. And when it comes to customizing a bong, the possibilities are practically endless.
It's like designing your dream car or something. You can choose from all sorts of different colors, design, sizes, features.
It really is. And the best part is, you don't have to be a master glass blower yourself to get a custom bong. There are tons of talented artists out there who offer custom bong creation services.
Oh, wow. So you can actually sit down with an artist and work with them to design a bong that's exactly what you've always wanted.
Exactly. You can choose the glass thickness, the shape, the color scheme, the percolator style, any feature you can imagine.
And they'll basically take your vision and turn it into a reality.
Yeah, using their skills and expertise to create a piece that's not only functional but also a work of art. And it's a great way to support local artists and the craft of glass blowing.
I love that. So if you're looking for a truly unique and personalized bong experience, going the custom route is definitely something to consider.
Absolutely. It's an investment for sure, but one you'll never regret.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about how glass thickness affects the durability, performance, and aesthetics of a bong. We've talked about the importance of safety and maintenance. We even touched on sustainability and customization.
It's amazing how much there is to learn about something that, at first glance, seems so simple.
Right. The world of bongs is full of surprises.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it's constantly evolving.
Okay, speaking of the future, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I'm curious to know where you think all this is headed.
In terms of bong design,
Yeah. Like, what do you see happening in the next few years when it comes to bong glass thickness and overall bong technology?
that's a great question. I think we're going to see some really cool innovations in the years to come. One trend that I think is going to become even bigger is the use of scientific glass blowing techniques.
I've heard a little bit about that. What does that involve?
It's basically taking a very scientific approach to glass blowing, using precise measurements and controlled heating processes to achieve very specific glass properties.
So they're basically engineering the glass at a molecular level to make it stronger and more durable.
Exactly. And it's leading to some really impressive results. The bongs that are being made with these techniques are already significantly stronger and more heat resistant than traditional bongs.
Are we talking about bongs that are practically indestructible?
I wouldn't say indestructible, but definitely more durable. And the technology is still in its early stages, so there's a lot of room for improvement. I think we're only scratching the surface of what's possible.
That's so cool. It sounds like the bongs of the future are going to be super high tech.
They might be,
Yeah.
but it's not all about high tech.
Yeah.
We're also seeing a growing interest in bongs made from alternative materials like silicone or ceramic.
Yeah, I've seen those at the smoke shop. They seem to be getting more popular.
They are. And they offer some unique advantages that glass can't always match, like durability and portability, and they're super easy to clean.
It seems like there's a bong material out there for everyone these days.
Exactly. But for a lot of bong enthusiasts, glass will always be the gold standard. It's classic, it's beautiful, and it's incredibly versatile.
It's hard to beat the aesthetic appeal of a well-made glass bong.
For sure. So I think in the future, we'll see a combination of things. We'll see continued innovation in glass blowing techniques, but we'll also see more experimentation with alternative materials.
It's going to be exciting to see how things evolve.
Absolutely. The future of bong design is bright.
All right, so before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I think it's important to reiterate that choosing the right bong glass thickness is a very personal journey. There's no right or wrong answer. It all comes down to what you're looking for in a bong and what works best for you and your lifestyle.
Couldn't agree more. Do your research, experiment, and find what you love.
Exactly. So take your time, consider all the factors we've discussed, and don't be afraid to try out different options until you find the perfect bong for you.
And most importantly, enjoy the process. Finding the perfect bong should be fun.
Well said. Now, in the next part of our deep dive, we're going to equip you with some pro-level cleaning and maintenance tips. Because no matter what thickness you choose, proper care is essential. So be sure to join us for part 2.
It's going to be good. Welcome back to our deep dive all about bong glass thickness.
Before we jumped into all the nitty-gritty of thickness, we were talking about how bongs are more than just functional pieces. They're kind of like works of art, right?
For sure. I mean, some people really get into the artistic side of things, and the thickness of the glass can have a huge impact on how the bong actually looks.
Absolutely. Especially with that thicker glass, like 7 millimeter to 10 millimeter. It seems like artists have so much more room to get creative with the designs and all the details.
It really does open up a whole world of possibilities for them. It's like having a bigger canvas to work with. Those really intricate glass sculptures you see, a lot of those use thicker glass to achieve those complex shapes and patterns.
Right. And it's not even just about the designs themselves. The thickness also affects how the light hits the bong. You know what I mean? It can create some really cool visual effects.
Totally. Thicker glass can refract light in all sorts of interesting ways. It adds depth and dimension to the piece and can even change how the colors look. It can make them more vibrant, almost like they're glowing.
That's so cool. I never really thought about it like that before. So I guess while thinner glass might be all about portability and smooth hits, thicker glass really brings that artistic element to the table.
It does. And it often has this more luxurious, tactile feel to it, too.
Like you can really feel the weight and the quality of the glass.
Yeah, exactly. So you're getting that artistic expression, that sense of craftsmanship, and that really nice feel in your hand.
It's almost like, I don't know, choosing between a sleek, modern sports car and a classic, handcrafted Rolls-Royce.
Yeah, I love that analogy. They both have their own unique appeal. It just comes down to what you're looking for.
For sure. Some people want that clean, minimalist look, while others want a real showstopper, something that's going to spark conversations.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of it all, right? There's a bong out there for everyone, no matter what your taste is or what your budget is.
Speaking of budget, let's be real for a minute. Some of those high-end, really intricate bongs with the thicker glass, they can get pretty pricey.
That's definitely true.
Hmm.
But when you're buying one of those, you're not just paying for the materials, you're paying for the skill and artistry of the glass blower who created it.
It's an investment in a piece of art, basically.
It is. So if you're on a tighter budget, you might want to start with something a little simpler,
Mhm.
maybe a thinner glass option or a less intricate design. But that doesn't mean sacrificing quality or aesthetics altogether.
Right, there are tons of beautifully crafted bongs out there that are more affordable, right?
Absolutely. You can still find something super cool in that 4-6 millimeter range that won't break the bank.
Hmm.
It's all about finding that balance between what you want and what you can afford.
And hey, even if you can't get that dream bong right now, there's always the option to upgrade later on down the line as your budget allows.
Exactly. It's like building a collection. You start with a solid piece that fits your budget, and then over time you can add more unique and intricate pieces as you go.
I love that idea. And who knows, maybe along the way you'll discover some new artists or styles you never even considered before.
Totally. Okay, so we've talked about aesthetics and budget. Now let's shift gears to something really important. Safety.
Especially when we're talking about glass, right? Bongs can be fragile and accidents can happen.
Exactly. No matter how thick or thin the glass is, you always want to handle your bong with care. Avoid any rough housing or playing around with it, especially when it's full of water.
And always, always, always make sure it's sitting on a stable surface where it's not going to get knocked over.
That's like bong safety 101.
It's worth repeating, though.
Oh, absolutely. Because, we've all had those close calls. You almost knock it over and your heart skips a beat.
Oh, yeah. Speaking of heart-stopping moments, what happens if you actually do drop your bong and it breaks? What's the best way to clean up all that broken glass safely?
Okay, so safety first. Always wear thick gloves and some kind of eye protection to avoid getting cut.
Makes sense.
And then make sure you dispose of the broken glass properly. Wrap it up in some newspaper or cardboard or something so no one else accidentally gets hurt.
Good reminders. Now, what about temperature changes? I've heard that thinner glass is more prone to cracking or breaking if it's exposed to extreme temperatures too quickly.
Yeah, that's called thermal shock. And it happens when there's a really sudden, drastic temperature change. Thinner glass is definitely more susceptible to it.
So, like pouring boiling water into a cold bong is a big no-no.
Exactly. Or putting a cold bong into hot water.
Got it. So if you're into those high-temp dabs, make sure your bong is designed to handle that kind of heat.
Exactly. Look for bongs made from heat-resistant glass and always follow the manufacturer's instructions. Safety first.
Always. A broken bong is not only a bummer, it can be dangerous.
For sure. Okay, let's switch gears again and talk about another essential aspect of bong ownership. Maintenance.
Keeping your bong clean, it not only makes for a more enjoyable smoking experience, it can actually make your bong last longer.
Absolutely. Think of it like taking care of your car. Regular maintenance keeps everything running smoothly and prevents you from having to deal with major issues down the road.
I like that analogy.
And just like with cars, different bong materials require different types of care.
So let's focus on glass bongs for now. What are the most important maintenance tasks?
Well, the most important thing is regular cleaning. Resin buildup can not only mess with the taste of your smoke, but it can also clog the airflow and potentially even harbor bacteria.
Ew, no one wants that. So how often should you be cleaning your bong?
It really depends on how often you use it. But a good rule of thumb is to at least give it a quick rinse with warm water after each session.
Okay, so just a quick rinse every time you use it. What does that do?
It'll help remove any loose resin before it has a chance to harden and become really difficult to clean. It's a good preventative measure.
Got it. So that's like the bare minimum. What about a more deep clean? How often should you be doing that?
I'd say at least once a week, or even more often if you're a heavy user.
Okay, and what's the best way to give your bong a deep clean?
The classic method is good old isopropyl alcohol and salt.
The tried and true method.
Exactly. The alcohol helps dissolve the resin, and the salt acts as an abrasive to help scrub away any stubborn buildup.
Okay, it's pretty straightforward. But what about those hard-to-reach spots? Like the percolator or the downstem. Those can be so tricky to get completely clean.
They can be. But don't worry, there are tools designed specifically for that.
Oh, good. Like what?
Long, flexible brushes are a lifesaver. You can get them in all different sizes and shapes, so you can find ones that fit perfectly into those narrow tubes and crevices.
Oh, right. I've seen those at the smoke shop.
They look kind of like pipe cleaners on steroids.
Exactly. And what about those tiny little holes that some percolators have? Sometimes it feels like nothing can get in there.
You can try using actual pipe cleaners for those,
Mm.
or even dental floss.
Wait, dental floss? Are you
I'm
serious?
totally serious. It works surprisingly well.
Huh, who knew? All right, so once you've scrubbed everything clean, what's the best way to dry it?
Air drying is the way to go. Just make sure it's completely dry before you put it away so you don't get any mold or mildew growing inside.
Ugh, that would be nasty. Speaking of putting it away, proper storage is super important too, right? It's all about protecting your investment, keeping
Mm,
your bong in pristine condition.
exactly.
So where's the best place to keep your bong when you're not using it?
Ideally, you want a cool, dry place away from direct sunlight. Sunlight can actually damage the glass over time, making it brittle.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it's something to keep in mind. And of course, keep it out of reach of any kids or pets.
Definitely. So somewhere safe, stable, and out of direct sunlight.
Exactly. And if you have a really nice bong, or if you travel with it often, you might even want to invest in a protective case.
What kind of case would you recommend?
For thinner glass bongs, you want something with a lot of padding, and ideally with separate compartments for each piece. That way, everything is cushioned and protected.
Makes sense. And what about for those thicker, sturdier bongs?
A hard shell case with a foam interior would be a good choice for those. That'll give it some extra protection against impacts and drops.
So we've covered cleaning, we've covered storage. Any other maintenance tips you want to share before we move on?
Yes, actually. One more thing. It's so important to regularly inspect your bong for any signs of wear and tear. Just take a few minutes every now and then to give it a good once-over.
Okay, what kind of things should people be looking for specifically?
Look for any cracks, chips, or scratches in the glass. Pay close attention to the joints and connections. Those tend to be the areas that are most prone to stress and wear.
Good to know. So if you find a small crack, is it possible to repair it or is it better to just get a new bong?
Honestly, it's usually best to just get a new bong if yours is cracked. Trying to repair cracked glass is really tricky, and it's often not successful.
Yeah, better to be safe than sorry.
Exactly. So to sum it all up, clean your bong regularly, store it properly, and inspect it for damage every so often. It's like taking care of any other valuable possession.
Makes sense. All right, now I want to shift gears a bit and talk about something that's becoming increasingly important in all aspects of our lives. Sustainability.
Sustainability is such a big topic these days, and I'm glad to see that it's something that the bong industry is starting to pay more attention to.
There's this growing movement toward more eco-friendly practices in glass blowing and bong production in general, right?
Absolutely. It's being driven by consumers who are demanding more sustainable products and by manufacturers who are realizing that it's not only good for the planet, but also good for business.
So, for someone who's looking to make a more sustainable bong purchase, what are some things they should keep in mind?
One of the first things to consider is the source of the glass. Some glass blowers use recycled glass in their creations, which is awesome.
Oh, wow. So you can actually buy bongs made from recycled glass. I had no idea.
You can, and it's a great way to reduce waste and conserve resources.
That's awesome.
And beyond the materials, some glass blowing studios are going even further by implementing more sustainable practices in the production process itself.
Like what kind of things are they doing?
Well, they might use energy-efficient equipment or try to reduce their water usage. Some are even working towards becoming carbon neutral.
That's amazing. It's great to hear that the industry is taking these steps. And what about packaging? Is that something to consider as well?
Absolutely. Some brands are moving away from traditional packaging materials and using recycled cardboard or biodegradable plastics instead.
So it really does sound like there are options out there for people who are passionate about sustainability.
There are, for sure. Do your research, ask questions, and support the brands that are aligning with your values.
I love that. It might take a little extra effort, but it's so worth it. Okay, now I want to talk about something that's just plain fun. Customization. Because, I mean, come on, who doesn't love having a bong that's uniquely theirs?
It's so true. And
Yeah.
when it comes to customization, the possibilities are practically endless.
I mean, it's like designing your dream car or something. You can pick the colors, the designs, the size, the features, all of it.
Exactly. And the best part is, you don't have to be a master glassblower to get a custom bong. There are so many talented artists out there who offer custom bong creation services.
Wow, so you can literally sit down with an artist and work with them to design a bong that's exactly what you've always wanted?
You can. It's a collaborative process. You tell them
Mhm.
what you're looking for, they offer suggestions and guidance, and together you create a piece that's truly one of a kind.
That's incredible. So you're not just getting a custom bong, you're getting a piece of art. And it's a great way to support local artists and the craft of glass blowing.
For sure. So if you're looking for a really unique, personalized bong experience, going the custom route is definitely something to consider.
All right, so we've covered a ton of ground here. We've talked about how glass thickness affects durability, performance, and the aesthetics of a bong. We talked about safety, we talked about maintenance, we even touched on sustainability and customization. It's amazing how much there is to learn about something that seems so simple at first
It's
glance.
true. And it's a constantly evolving world, too.
Okay, so speaking of the future, I'm curious to know what you think is next for the bong industry. Where do you see all of this going in the years to come?
Ooh, that's a fun question. I think we're going to see some really cool innovations in the future. One trend that I think is going to become even bigger is the use of scientific glass blowing techniques.
I've heard a little bit about that. What exactly does that involve?
Basically, they're taking a very scientific approach to glass blowing, using really precise measurements and controlled heating processes to achieve very specific glass properties. It's all about engineering the glass at a molecular level.
So they can essentially manipulate the glass to be stronger and more durable.
Exactly. And the results are already pretty impressive. These bombs are significantly stronger and more heat resistant than what we're used to. And the technology is still in its early stages, so I think we're just scratching the surface of what's possible.
Are we talking like indestructible bongs in the future?
I don't know about indestructible, but definitely much, much more durable.
That's wild. So it sounds like the bongs of the future are going to be super high tech.
They might be. But it's not all about high tech either. We're also seeing a growing interest in bongs made from alternative materials like silicone or ceramic.
Yeah, I've seen those at the smoke shop. They seem to be getting more popular.
They are. And they have some unique advantages that glass just can't match, like durability, portability. They're super easy to clean.
It seems like there really is a bong material out there for everyone these days.
There is. But I think for a lot of bong enthusiasts, glass will always hold a special place. It's a classic material, it's beautiful, and it's incredibly versatile.
I can definitely see that. So it sounds like the future of bong design is going to be a really interesting mix of things. We'll have the continued evolution of glass blowing techniques, but also this exploration of alternative materials and new design possibilities.
Yeah, I think so. It's going to be exciting to see how things evolve.
All right, well, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I think it's important to say once again that choosing the right bong glass thickness is a very personal decision. There's no right or wrong answer. It really comes down to what you're looking for and what works best for you and your lifestyle.
Couldn't agree more.
Do your research, experiment, and find what you love.
Exactly. And most importantly, enjoy the process. Finding the perfect bong should be a fun experience.
Love that. Now, in the next and final part of our deep dive, we're going to get into some pro-level cleaning and maintenance tips. Because no matter what thickness you choose, keeping your bong clean and well-maintained will not only make it last longer, but it'll also make for a much more enjoyable smoking experience. So be sure to join us for part 3.
Welcome back to our deep dive. We've talked about all the ins and outs of bong glass thickness, from durability and performance to those gorgeous aesthetics.
We've even touched on sustainability and the exciting world of customization.
But now, let's get down to the nitty-gritty of keeping your bong looking and smoking its best no matter what thickness you choose.
That's right, we're talking pro-level cleaning and maintenance.
Because, let's be real, nobody wants to hit a bong that's all grimy, right?
It's not just about aesthetics, though. A clean bong actually smokes better.
True. It can affect the flavor, the airflow, everything.
It can even become a health hazard if you let things get too out of control. Yikes. Okay, noted. So let's dive into some of the common cleaning challenges that people face. One thing I always struggle with, especially with those bongs that have the intricate percolators, is cleaning those hard-to-reach spots.
Oh, yeah, those can be a real pain. You spend all this time cleaning, and it still feels like you're not getting everything.
Exactly. Like those tiny little holes, how do you even get in there?
Don't worry, there are specialized cleaning tools for that. Flexible brushes are a must-have. They come in all different sizes and shapes, so you can find ones that fit perfectly into those narrow tubes and crevices.
Right, those long bendy brushes I've seen at the smoke shop. What about those teeny tiny holes, though?
For those, you can try using pipe cleaners, believe it or not. or even dental floss.
Wait, dental floss? You're kidding.
Nope, it actually works. The floss can get into those really tight spots and dislodge any stubborn resin. Another issue a lot of people struggle with is just really stubborn resin that doesn't want to come off with regular cleaning.
Yeah, like no matter how much you scrub, it's still there. Any tips for tackling those tough spots?
You could try using something a bit more abrasive, like coarse salt or denture tablets. But be careful with those, especially on thinner
From
glass.
spick and scratch.
Yeah, you got to be gentle. What about heat? I've heard people talking about using boiling water to loosen up the resin.
I've heard that too, but I'm always so scared of breaking the glass.
You're right to be cautious. Never pour boiling water directly into a cold bong. That sudden temperature change could shatter it.
Okay, good to know. So, how should you use heat safely?
You can fill your bong with warm water and let it sit for a bit. That'll help soften the resin before you start scrubbing.
Makes sense. So, we've covered some basic cleaning and some more advanced techniques. Are there any preventative measures you can take to make cleaning easier in the long run?
Absolutely. One of the simplest but most effective things you can do is rinse your bong with warm water right after each use.
Oh, so like a quick pre-clean?
Yeah, just to get rid of any loose resin before it hardens.
Okay, that's easy enough. Anything else?
Ash catchers are a game changer.
Ash catchers, what are those?
There are these little attachments that you add to your bong. They basically catch the ash and debris from your bowl before it gets into the main chamber of the bong.
So it's like a filter for your bong.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It makes cleaning way easier because you're dealing with less resin buildup in the first place.
I need to get myself one of those. Okay, so we've got cleaning covered. Let's talk about storage. We touched on this briefly in the last part, but proper storage is super important, right?
It's essential. It's all about protecting your investment and keeping your bong in tip-top shape.
All right, so where should you store your bong when you're not using it?
First and foremost, you need a location that's safe and stable. You don't want to store it somewhere that it could get knocked over easily.
Like on a high shelf or near the edge of a table.
Exactly. And direct sunlight is a big no-no. Over time, sunlight can actually damage the glass and make it brittle.
So somewhere cool, dark, and dry is ideal.
You got it. And depending on the bong, you might even want to consider a protective case.
A case, good idea. What kind would you recommend?
If you have a delicate, thinner glass bong, you'll want a padded case with separate compartments for each piece.
To keep everything nice and cushioned. What about for thicker, sturdier bongs?
You can get hard shell cases with foam interiors. Those will offer extra protection against accidental bumps and drops.
All right, so we've covered cleaning, maintenance, and storage. Any other last words of wisdom before we wrap up this deep dive?
One last thing. Regular inspections are key. Just take a few minutes every now and then to really look over your bong and make sure there's no damage.
Like cracks or chips.
Exactly. Pay close attention to the joints and connections. Those tend to be the areas that experience the most stress.
And if you do happen to find a crack, is there any chance of fixing it, or should you just get a new bong?
It's almost always better to just get a new one. Repairing cracked glass is really tricky and often doesn't hold up over time.
Yeah, better to be safe than sorry.
Absolutely. And even with the most careful handling and the best care, accidents can still happen. If you do end up breaking your bong, please be super careful when cleaning up the broken glass.
Wear gloves, eye protection, all that good stuff.
Exactly. Safety first. Okay, I think that about covers it.
Wow, we really went deep on this one. I feel like I've learned so much about bong glass thickness. It's amazing how much there is to know.
It's true. There's a lot more to it than meets the eye.
Well, thanks to you, I think our listener is now well equipped to choose the perfect bong for their needs and to keep it in tip-top shape for years to come.
Absolutely.
Remember, everyone, choosing the right bong glass thickness is a personal journey. There's no one-size-fits-all answer. It depends on what you're looking for, how you use your bong, your budget, your aesthetic preferences. It's all about finding what works best for you.
So do your research, don't be afraid to experiment, and most importantly, have fun with it.
That's what it's all about. Happy smoking, everyone.